This is Jenny. I wanted to let you all know that I apologize for the light changes. I also decided to do get ready with me makeup routine. Let's bring Fawn Marie home. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. And if you've made the choice to come back to my channel, I want to give you a special thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. So today I'm doing something a little different. If you've been on my channel before, you know, someone who's an active true crime viewer, I have been taking actions for a long time now to help families of crime victims or those who appear to have been the victim of a crime. It only made sense to me to at least bring a story to my channel. And I'm choosing to only, at this point, cover communities that are underrepresented. And I'm a part of several of those communities. So I am going to be covering cases of people of color. I'm going to be covering cases of people in the LGBTQ plus family. And I am also going to be covering cases for those who are in poverty or just who are living paycheck to paycheck, like so many of us are. I think that a lot of times if you're not from a wealthy or at least somewhat middle-class family, you're not gonna get the attention that you deserve. Today we will sadly be covering a still unsolved case of Fawn Marie Mountain. I actually heard about her case, I think it was a few years ago. I can't remember to be sure. I love watching Kendall Rae and have been watching her for several years, and she covered the story of Fawn, and it impacted me so much that I donated to, there was a GoFundMe, I believe. I donated to that. I am currently on the Facebook page that the family has created. So there will be opportunities at the end. I'll talk about them and link them in the comments or in the description where you can know how you can help this family. They're still searching for answers and they deserve them. But more than anything, Fawn deserves justice. I want to do my part to help. It's a very small part. I don't have a huge, large platform, but her case is important and it's the one I chose to feature first. This is my first true crime video, and at this point, I only plan to cover one. I may do more depending on if it's something that I feel like I can do justice to, if I feel like it's content that you all are going to watch. If you like what you're seeing as far as you like the idea of me covering cases for underrepresented individuals, then please leave that in the comments. Please like, please share, subscribe, and that will ensure that I can continue to make content like this. And without further ado, let's get started. Where is Fawn Marie Mountain? We're going to be talking about the strange disappearance of Fawn. And I want to start by talking about Fawn and who she is. What kind of youth did she have? A little bit about her personality. That's important to me. So Fawn was born on March 2nd, 1987. She was raised in Altoona. I love that name, Altoona, Pennsylvania. She was raised with her brother Alan and by her stepfather and her mother Dorothy. Fawn did not have an easy upbringing, and she actually had a very traumatic childhood. She grew up in a very chaotic and a very dysfunctional household. She was abused by members of her family, but also some family friends. And so she really had a rough childhood. But her childhood friends say, and those in school said, that they would have never known because she was such a bright light, and that she got along with a lot of people, and she seemed to always have a smile. And so they had no idea of the traumatic events that were happening at home. But she really enjoyed school, was very active. She especially enjoyed sports, and she liked art, and she loved pizza. Fawn fell into an abusive relationship, and she ended up having 2 children from this relationship. This man really brought Fawn down and drove Fawn into a downward spiral based on the abuse that she was receiving. Self-esteem was damaged, and in time, unfortunately, they lost custody of her 2 children. This greatly affected Fawn, and she did turn to drugs and alcohol in order to cope with her abusive relationship, the past abuse, as well as her losing her children. She turned to substances and alcohol to try to numb her pain. That relationship that she had came to an end, but she did later become involved in another relationship, and this relationship was abusive as well. And Fawn was thrilled to find out that she was expecting a child. She later found out that that child was a daughter. Very tragically, that daughter was stillborn. Fawn named her daughter Caden, and she had Caden cremated and kept her ashes close to her at all times. And I really want to make the point that her daughter's ashes, of course, like we can probably all understand, me especially as a mom, but just as a human too, that was one of her most precious possessions, and those ashes were extremely important to her. 2009, things seemed to be looking up for Fawn. Fawn went to a local hangout called The Island. And at The Island, Fawn met Heather. I believe that they caught each other's eye, Heather and Fawn. And this was Fawn's first relationship with a woman, and they just had an instant connection. Sparks flew, and their relationship progressed fast. And when I say fast, I mean really fast, to the point where Heather had asked Fawn to move in with her. Fawn's mother, Dorothy, did mention something that she thought was pretty odd. So Fawn came to visit her, and when she told her about Heather wanting her to move, she mentioned that Heather wants me to move to Clayburg with her. And Fawn, according to her mom, had said that she was afraid that if she moved to Clayburg, she was never coming back to Altoona. And her mom found that to be rather odd, and it was really weird because, and I'll show you, I'll insert the picture of the map, but it's only approximately 19 miles between the 2 cities, between Altoona and between Claysburg. That was only about 19 miles. So her mom that's something that she mentioned that was odd. Her mother indicated that Fawn was right. As I continue to tell Fawn's story, you will find out that Fawn never did return to Altoona. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I didn't want to do my makeup throughout the whole storytelling because I wanted to get the hang of just speaking into the camera on this case without doing the makeup too. Today I just did eyebrows, put on magnetic lashes, lip gloss. That's the extent of my getting ready. And so at this point, I'm going to start doing my makeup while speaking to you all to finish off this case. I just want to add some eyeshadow. It's a little out of order from how I usually do things, but I want to go ahead and add some eyeshadow and do a colorful pop of a lip while I finish out. So this will be true crime and makeup at the end. And sorry, y'all, I realized that I was a little bit dark. I had forgotten to put my ring light up. Apologies that we're seeing a little bit of difference in light, but hopefully this will work out actually a little bit better. I think it's important for you to know that Fawn did eventually end up moving in with Heather, and they lived in several apartments together, but then they ended up settling into a mobile home. And in this mobile home, I'm going to tell you some things about the mobile home that I think are really unique and important to Fawn's story. So in this mobile home park, Heather had family there. Heather's brother, Mike, actually lived there in that mobile home as well. And he lived with his girlfriend, Stephanie. So both of them were there, the two siblings, Heather and her brother, Mike, as well as his girlfriend, Stephanie. So Stephanie had allegedly mentioned that during this time when she met Fawn, she thought Fawn was super sweet, just so sweet. And she was concerned. She was really concerned about Heather being involved with Fawn because she'd known Heather to have a hot temper, to not be able to keep a job. She had just known a lot of things about Heather and didn't feel too great about Fawn being with Heather based on this. And almost immediately, some of you probably know where this is going, but almost immediately after Fawn started living with Heather, Heather became extremely, extremely controlling and possessive of Fawn. So much so that she made her come to work with her. Fawn didn't have any reason to be there or really anything to do, but Heather made her stay in the car. And she locked the car and said that she was setting the alarm and that if she got out, that she would know because the alarm would start going off. And on the rare occasions that she allowed, and I'll say like allowed in quotation marks, because that's what she was doing. She was literally controlling Fawn's every move, wasn't letting her have any autonomy whatsoever. And I think it was mentioned that she allegedly said she didn't trust to leave her home. And so the times that she did leave her home, she would padlock the door. That's right, you heard it here. She would padlock Fawn's door, her and Fawn's door, so that she couldn't get out. These controlling aspects of Heather's personality and her abuse towards Fawn really started isolating Fawn. Isolating from her friends, isolating her from her family. It's important to note here that Fawn's only source of income was her Social Security. It's unknown if Heather allowed her to retain those funds. Heather was controlling her life and every aspect of her life. And Heather also ensured that Fawn did not have a telephone, further isolating her from her loved ones and people who could be there for her. Eventually, the control and the verbal abuse escalated. The control, the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse eventually escalated to physical abuse. And one of the first incidents that I'm aware of is a time that Fawn visited her mother. Fawn visited her mother and she had a hoodie on. And according to her mother, she looked like she had the zipper up, like she was attempting to hide something on her neck. So her mom asked her to unzip it, pull it down, pull it up, basically to let her see. When she opened it up, she slowly started opening it or unzipping it. And that's when she saw all kind of marks on Fawn's neck. Her mom was freaked out. Was like, what the F is this? Like, what is this? And Fawn ended up telling her, yeah, Heather came home really drunk, really inebriated, drunker than a skunk is exactly what her mother said. And she basically, like, I think tied up Fawn's legs and hands, somehow restrained her, sat on her, put a rope on around her neck. And according to her mom, Fawn said that Heather choked her out. And this is that's one of the first incidents that I'm aware of based on research, but that it doesn't stop there. Now you may ask yourself, why did Fawn not leave? And I think that if you're asking yourself that, you may have never been and hopefully you haven't been in an abusive relationship. But there is a cycle of abuse. So if you're not aware of that, like how that works, and if you want to know, I would look that up. Look up what the cycle of abuse is, and it'll detail a lot better than I can, because by no means am I an expert, but I do know somewhat about this based on research and based on things that I've learned from folks who have been in these relationships. And what the common theme is, and as a lot of us know, it's not just the abuse. It's not just physical, it's mental, psychological, all type of abuse going on. And there's all type of control and possession going on in a lot of these abusive domestic violence situations. And so it's not as simple and cut dry as just get out of there. The way that Heather had it set up is exactly the way she wanted it set up. Fawn was dependent on her, so much to the point where financially she was dependent upon her. When she would try to leave, things would happen, as we're going to get ready to get into. And it's hard to see a way out. And when you add on the traumatic childhood that she had a childhood full of trauma, of abuse. And then that abuse, that cycle continued. The relationships she was in were abusive. And so I would say, I really want you to have that compassion and that knowledge to look at it with the full picture. It's never as simple as leaving. But I will tell you this, Fawn wanted to get out. Fawn desperately wanted to get out. And I'll tell you two things that further make this point. So first, I'll share that Fawn had gotten away from Heather before, and she went to her mom's house. Heather could not let her be so possessive and controlling over her. She would try to find out where Fawn is. And when she would find her, she would either, by convincing her or other ways and methods, get her to come back. And, then the cycle continues. So the second thing that occurred that I know of that was a significant part of Fawn's story is in February of 2011, things were just really bad. Things had took a nosedive. It was already really not great. And it just got so bad that Fawn decided that she really not only needed, but she wanted to get away from Heather. And so on this day, Heather took Fawn, as she did before, to her job, set the alarm, and went about her business. Now, Fawn decided to take the chance. She decided that she was going to take the chance whether the alarm went off or not. And kudos to her, to have that bravery and just that forethought of I want to get myself out of this situation. I know that if I was in that situation, I don't know what I would do, but I might be too afraid of what's going to happen if the alarm goes off. She knew she needed to get out of the situation. She was desperate to get away from Heather. She saw an opportunity. She opened that door and she bolted. She bolted and ran for her life. She eventually got to a payphone because, as we talked about before, she did not have a job based on Heather's control, and she did not have a cell phone. So she ended up running and going to a payphone, contacting a friend and asking that friend to take her to her mother's. Before she could do that, before she could go to her mother's, she knew she needed to go back home. And the reason why was her daughter's ashes. Her daughter's ashes, Caden's ashes, were at their home. And she just simply could not, she felt she could not leave without them. As we've talked about before, this was very important to her, as it would be to so many of us. And she wanted to make sure that she got her daughter's ashes and retrieved them. And the reason for that is, disgustingly, Heather had allegedly indicated that she would dump these ashes in the past. And that just makes me so angry on Fawn's behalf, so mad. To be that demented, to dump someone's ashes of their stillborn child. It's way beyond me. It's way beyond us. I'm sure you all agree. That's just, how demented can you be? But are we surprised? Probably not. But something about that part just really got, there's so many things that got under my skin, but that really got under my skin. He talked about the fact that Mike, Heather's brother, lived in that mobile home park, as well as his girlfriend Stephanie. But also nearby were their parents, and they owned a butcher shop. So I want to detail that for you right now, and I want you to keep that in mind, because that's an important detail. Both of those things are important details that will come up later in this story. So put a pin on that and just know it will come up again. Fawn remembered once she got back to the trailer that she did not have the key, unfortunately, to get in. She didn't have the key, but she thought it was worth it to just break in to get her belongings, but specifically her daughter's ashes. So she breaks in to get the ashes. However, Heather finds out about this. Obviously, like when she comes home, she finds out about it, and what she decides to do is to call the police. And get this. Fawn was charged with breaking into her own property that she had been living in with Heather. She was charged with felony burglary, trespassing, and she was placed on probation. They also gave her that $2,700 fine. So after this incident, somehow Fawn did end up back with Heather. You'll never guess what happened next. Fawn's mother, Dorothy, received a restraining order, but it's not from who you might think. It wasn't from Heather or regarding Heather. It was regarding her daughter, Fawn. So it appears that now Heather has isolated Fawn even further from one of her last support systems. After this time, Fawn was really cut off from everything and pretty much everybody. Heather didn't allow Fawn to leave the trailer / mobile home without her permission, so she couldn't have visitors. She just really seemed like was kind of in a way being kept prisoner in their home. One of the last people that Fawn did have in her life was her brother, Heather's brother, Mike, his girlfriend at the time, Stephanie. So Stephanie, as I mentioned before, tried to be there for Fawn as much as she possibly could be. And so they started kind of talking through their trailer windows. It was so bad that even Heather's parents started like spying on Fawn and keeping tabs on her. And so the mother actually saw Stephanie and Fawn speaking and let Heather know. And Heather boarded up the windows to try to prevent her from being able to talk to Stephanie. And at this point, even with the windows boarded up, the neighbors reportedly called police numerous times from hearing very loud and violent sounding fights and arguments. There was a period of time, the police did end up coming out countless times due to these phone calls from concerned neighbors. One day, it had gotten so much worse in public because several witnesses, including Stephanie, Mike's girlfriend, indicated that they witnessed Heather choking Fawn so violently that she lost consciousness. And at some point after that, Fawn had attempted to leave, and Heather went looking for her because she always lost her shit when Fawn did get the ability to leave her. And she would try to like hunt her down, find her, and bring her back. So she found her and almost hit her with her truck and brought her back to the mobile home park. After this, Fawn was able to escape again, ran into a neighbor's home, and Heather followed her into that home and physically drug her out of the neighbor's home back to the trailer. Fawn decided that after this point that she just needed to get out. She was desperate to get away from Heather. So she decided that she was going to reach out and try to get to her mom's. Even with the restraining order in place, she needed to get away from Heather. So she left, and she did go to her mother. However, Heather had the nerve to call the cops, and Dorothy was arrested. And she was kept in jail for 2 days for the violation of that restraining order. Dorothy was really, really worried about Fawn. At some point, Fawn was back with Heather, and she was not hearing from Fawn anymore. Dorothy wasn't. She tried to call in as many welfare checks, but she really didn't appear to know what to do next, and she did all that she could that was within her power. So around this time, Mike and Heather's parents needed to get that butcher shop that I talked about earlier. They needed to get it ready for, I believe it was hunting season. So they, and I believe it was Heather, Mike, Fawn, and the parents. I'm not sure if Stephanie was there or not. I think she may have been, but I for sure know everyone else, and potentially Stephanie too, went to help clean the butcher shop for hunting season. When they were all done, everybody had pitched in to help. The father decided to pass out some beers. They were just gonna hang out together and have some beers. And apparently Heather didn't like Fawn to drink. And so Fawn didn't want to cause any kind of scene or ask any questions. Her father had given her the beer, and she ended up drinking it, and she appeared to have had a good time. It was also reported that during this time they were having the beers, that Fawn was talking about getting off that 2-year probation, and that she would wanted to be able to go to bars. And it didn't seem like Heather liked that. In fact, it seemed to be making her angry. After they left, Fawn and Stephanie, they got back home, and Heather and Mike walked off to do something. And Heather and Fawn stayed behind just to talk about what they were going to do that evening with the rest of their evening, what plans that they had. And I believe Fawn was going to watch a few scary movies and said she was going to then probably go to bed. And Heather and Mike came back, and then each couple went to their individual mobile homes / trailers. Fawn and Heather went into theirs, and Mike and Stephanie went into theirs. So the next day, Mike and Stephanie come out of their home, and they see Heather out there. And Stephanie mentioned that she thought that was pretty unusual because she did not let Fawn pretty much out of her sight. You didn't typically see her unless Fawn was with her. So Stephanie went up to Heather and asked, "Where's Fawn?" Heather had told Stephanie that she woke up at 3 a.m. the night before, and that Fawn was gone. That she was gone. And she didn't appear to be anxious, stressed, upset about this. And if you recall all of the other incidences where Fawn was able to get away from her, Heather had to find her and bring her back. But this time she was all of a sudden very pretty nonchalant about the whole situation, which seemed pretty out of character from what she had done in the past. November 25th was the last time that Fawn was seen alive. And I wanted to clarify that hunting season was ending, not that it was beginning. The situation went from odd, out of character for Heather, to downright chilling and terrifying when, per Stephanie, the same day that Fawn had disappeared, Heather and her father went to work gutting her entire trailer. I mean, they were pulling out flooring, subflooring, carpet. They essentially gutted the whole thing and replaced everything. And they were doing this renovation in the middle of winter, which was really odd. And they poured a slab of concrete, supposedly for a dog run. Heather swiftly moved out of state within, I think, about a week to, I believe, Ohio. And because of the breakdown in communication with Fawn and her family and friends, Fawn wasn't officially reported missing until nearly 3 years later. Now, I want you to not judge this family because we aren't in their situation. We don't know their family dynamics. We only know what we've been able to gather because there hasn't been a lot of coverage on this case. Thankfully, a few creators have covered it. And with Bridget, her cousin's tireless work, it was her mom and other family and friends, they've been able to make things happen. But it's been an uphill climb. So in the years after Fawn disappeared, apparently Heather changed her story several times about what happened to Fawn, that she had left and ran away. She thought she was in jail. All these other stories, even that she had left and then came back. But there was a certain point where Fawn's stepfather was really gravely ill, and he wanted to say his last goodbyes to Fawn. They tried to reach out and were not able to. This is another thing I think that was troubling for the family, that if Fawn could have been there, that she would have. Shortly after Heather moved out of state, she moved back, and she had a new partner with her. And this partner eventually married Heather, and this partner had children. Fast forward, there is a new here recently, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. Heather Dybert was arrested. This is Fawn's ex-girlfriend, allegedly the person who saw her last alive, was arrested on 32 different charges on an unrelated crime. She's being charged with allegedly hiring someone to kill her ex-wife and her ex-wife's family. And to give you a little background on this, what happened is the residents inside this home recall hearing a thump, a loud thud at around midnight. When they went out to check on it, they saw, I think, fire and smoke. They ended up getting a fire extinguisher, coming out to try to put out the fire, called 911. When the first responders arrived, they went about reviewing the scene. And what they found is they found a back porch, which looked like it started to melt a lot of children's toys. And in that back porch, they found what appeared to be a Molotov cocktail. And so this was arson, is what it was determined, that this case was arson. The residents of this household were questioned. There were 6 people inside, and 3 of those people were minors. And one of the people who was in this home was Heather's estranged wife. When they asked the residents of this household who they think could have done this, if they had any ideas, the only person that they could think of was involved in an incident with them not even about 10 days before. So about 10 days before, just for the sake of this story, we're going to call Heather's estranged wife Sarah. And we're going to call her Sarah to protect her identity. And I believe her identity hasn't been released. Even if it was, I would not be releasing her identity. So we'll call her Sarah. Heather's wife at the time, Sarah's father, received a letter that said, "Dad, please come get me." And this was alarming to him. He went to the police station and indicated that he was concerned for his daughter's well-being. And the police officers ended up going to Heather's home, and they ended up taking Sarah that day for her own safety. Some point after that, I believe they were back at the police station, maybe working on what was going on with this whole situation. And they happened to spot outside of the police station, Heather and her mom just creepily looking at them and kind of like looking at them from a distance. Heather saw them spotting her, got out of her vehicle, went and approached them and just went ham on the dad's vehicle, was yelling, and she demanded to know if Sarah was leaving her. And Sarah said, "Yes, I am." And right then and there, Heather threatened to kill Sarah's father right there in front of the both of them. So after this, of course, they reported this to the police department, and Heather was potentially on the hook for terroristic threats. But unfortunately, this incident didn't land her in jail. She was out free. So a few things to note. Fawn's family had tried to report her missing. They had tried and attempted several times, but they were not getting help from the police officers. They didn't take into account the multiple times they came out to Heather and Fawn's home on domestic violence calls from neighbors, from concerned folks in the neighborhood. They didn't take into account any of that. And they essentially said, Fawn's an adult, she can go missing if she wants. They really weren't helpful to the family, and the family did everything in their power to try to report her missing. So I mentioned her cousin Bridget, who grew up with her, and they had lost contact, just went different directions in their lives, but obviously the love was still there. She was the one who got with Dorothy, Fawn's mom, to really take everything to the next level. She's the one who created Bring Fawn Marie Home Facebook page that I have talked about before, and she was the one who really started getting the ball rolling. She hit roadblock after roadblock, trying to get a hold of the police to try to figure out what was going on with the case. At one point, she contacted them. They indicated that the people who were working on the case, the chief and I believe the investigator or detective working on the case, were both fired. And after that point, they did not reassign the case to anyone else. It was literally just sitting there doing nothing. No one was doing anything. But the family, they've been trying to do all that they can. Bridget reached out to local news stations and to get Fawn's story out there, which is probably how I ended up finding out about it. So I want to leave you with a few things about how they were able to find out that Fawn was missing. So Fawn did receive Social Security disability, and Bridget called. This was just a brilliant idea between Social Security and then Bridget just having the idea to call. So she called, and Social Security decided, after she called and said, we believe she's missing, they sent a letter out stating that Fawn needed to come into the office for an interview, and then once they saw her, her benefits could continue. But if they didn't see her, her benefits would not be continuing. You know, you would think that this is a great idea because Heather's pushing this information out there that's absolutely incorrect. That she had left, that she had went to New York, that she actually had left and came back and was with her again. Like all of these stories, she was telling everyone different stories about what happened to Fawn. This would really help them to be able to see, like, if Fawn's okay, she'll come in and her Social Security disability will continue, but she didn't come in. So this is the chance for you to take some action, because at this point, Fawn's case is still unsolved. She's still missing, and her family deserves justice, but more than anything, Fawn Marie Mountain deserves justice for her case. She should have had justice before if the appropriate departments had taken the appropriate actions and really treated her case like they should treat all cases, really pouring all of their resources into finding out where she was. There's a few ways that you can help. You can go to the Facebook page that I've shown before, and I'll link it below. You can follow Bring Fawn Marie Home, and just keep yourself updated in that space. They sometimes have things for sale in support of domestic violence victims. They have other things that are available specifically in reference to Fawn. But if you're able, do that. But if you don't have the funds to do that, that's understandable. Do what you can. If you can give their Facebook a follow, that's completely free, and keep yourself updated. More importantly, if you are directly knowledgeable about what happened to Fawn, at this point, we know that Heather's gotten herself into another situation, and it's important to note that Heather has had at least 10 restraining orders filed against her by mostly prior partners. And sometimes Heather would turn around and file a restraining order against them for the same exact things. That's really telling. If you have direct knowledge as to where Fawn is, the whereabouts of her, please contact the authorities. I will be providing the number as well on this video. Maybe you were afraid before, but to my knowledge, Heather is still currently incarcerated based on the alleged hit that she put out on her now estranged wife. So please come forward with any information. It's always frustrating to end these cases when they're still unsolved, but I feel like this is a great opportunity for us who are active true crime viewers to take a stand on the behalf of victims, people we don't know. It's so amazing, and I feel like uplifted myself personally throughout the years that I've liked the Facebook, signed a petition, donated to a GoFundMe when I was able to, just provided some love and light and encouraging words on a Twitter page or an Instagram page or a Facebook page created by the family of a crime victim. So that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for taking the time and being patient with me. I know this video was anticipated last weekend, but I really wanted to do it right, and I wanted to make sure that I got as many details as I could. I'm just hoping that we get some justice for Fawn. I hope you're doing well today, and we'll see you next time.